Hi everybody, I'm Ian Sefferman, CEO of Mobile Dev HQ. I have Roby Ganguly of AppTimeUp to my left and Ryan Morrell of PlacePlay to my right. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
This is our next installment of the App Developer Conversations, and this week there was a little bit of news about a dispute in statistics around how big Apple's platform is actually growing and how quickly it's growing. App Annie said that it was growing about 12.9%. Where in a month, whereas Apple's statistics, if you break it out, is much higher based on, and this is by revenue, based on paying out $6.5 billion a month or two ago, over $4 billion in the last, I think it was probably 6-7 months ago, right? This sort of at a one level above that brings up the question that as an app developer, how should you be thinking about using intelligence platforms like an App Annie or others to make the best decisions for your app?
So I think that the first thing I would say is if somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I've got this intelligence platform and it gives you all this data and it's objectively all accurate," they're full of crap. Turn around and go somewhere else, right? Because the only people who have pure, perfect data are the app stores themselves. If you're going to use this data, you have to think about it as giving you directionally important information, saying here's how things do well and here's how things do poorly, and thinking about where you're benchmarking and just in general what you should be focusing on. That's helpful. It drives insights and information.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think I would reiterate that. And especially in this example, I think it's a case of developers need to use their own data to augment what they get from other people to make sure that they can come to 90% accuracy, right? So if you're hearing from App Annie that the market has grown 10%, but you've been in the same ranks and you've grown 20%, well, guess what? The market's grown 20%. If you hear someone say Windows Phone is exploding, and you have an app on Windows Phone and you're not making any downloads, guess what? It's not, right? So every developer needs to take all of these things with a grain of salt.
That's right. Yeah, and so essentially we are an intelligence platform at Mobile Dev HQ, and so I fully support everything. Like we cannot tell you 100% accuracy exactly what's going on, which is part of the reason why we don't even say sort of this is the exact number of searches for a particular search term. We tell it to you based on relative volume of all searches going on, right? And so that's it, because that is a more transparent way of showing that this is directionally where it is, but we cannot be 100% accurate as to this. And the other thing I think that's interesting, and just adding on to here, is sort of this goes into what you're saying, which is like augment somebody's data set with your own. I'd also say, try to find the services that augment their own data sets with many other data sets. So, one way I often talk about our service to people is we have a bunch of data sets that sort of mimic what's going on in the App Store, or get data about the App Store. We don't ever use one single data source for that. The way I explain it is sort of we are the Nate Silver of app stores, right? Where Nate Silver recognized that every single poll is biased in some way, but together you can use it to build a really interesting model that is pretty darn accurate. We're the same way. Like we know that every single one of our data sources is biased in some way, but used together, like that can be pretty accurate. And a developer should think about how they can do that on their own as well for many different data sources. Yeah. And so I think that brings up the question of just sort of, how should the developers be thinking about rankings in general, and how should they try to optimize for that or not optimize for that?
Yeah. So ranking, I feel like people talk about this a lot. It's like I have the number 10 ranked app or something, and in some cases that's meaningful, and in some cases that's not meaningful. So congratulations if you had the number 1 app on the App Store but made no money, and who cares?
Yep.
So, every developer, and this kind of goes into one of the other segments, needs to understand what those rankings mean to their business and whether or not they attribute actual cash into their coffers, right? So if I'm using rankings, I'm understanding how many downloads a day I'm getting at WatchSpot, and how much money I make there, and then if I spend X to get to up 10 spots, how much money am I going to make there, and then it's just a cost benefit analysis. Outside of that, rankings are kind of meaningless.
Yeah, it seems like they're being de-emphasized by the stores themselves, Apple in particular. And if that's true, like spend less of your time focusing on rankings and more of your time with search, right?
Yep.
And really getting smart about search and being directionally correct. And ultimately, no matter what any of these data sets tell you, you have your business data,
Yep.
right? And that's the only thing that really you get paid on or
Yep.
don't get paid on, right?
Yep.
So look
Yeah.
at that first.
Yep.
Yeah, but and I would say, I mean, I feel like it's I don't mean to be insulting in any way. Rankings are a really visual way to judge yourself against everybody else, right? And so I think everybody needs to step back and say, what is the real judge of my success or failure? And that will always be cash.
Yep.
Right.
And if you're not generating cash, then you need to think about how you can generate cash
Yep.
and then worry about rankings.
Yep. Great. I think that's a good discussion about intelligence platforms and rankings in general. Thanks, guys, and be sure to watch the other segments. Like this video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, share it every way you can. The first thing is that you have to start looking for user acquisition channels that aren't going to be crazy expensive, that are dominated by those guys who can afford to spend a lot. I think that you probably are thinking